Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Times is reporting that nationwide ICE raids on undocumented immigrants living here in the U.S. will start this Sunday. Let's get right to CNN's Nick Valencia. He is on the border of El Paso, Texas. What do we know about this, Nick?
Allison, you remember the raids that were expected to happen back in June in 10 major U.S. cities that were later called off in an unprecedented announcement by President Trump. Well, those raids are back on. This, according to the New York Times, who spoke to two current Department of Homeland Security officials as well as one former official. They say the raids are expected to happen on Sunday and last several days. The target of these raids will be at least 2,000 undocumented immigrants with current removal orders. But how these raids might be different is they will also, according to the Times, include collateral arrests, meaning even if an undocumented immigrant is not the target of a raid but happens to be on the scene of one, they too may be detained by ICE officials. Now, U.S. Customs, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services acting director was asked about this. Here's what Ken Cuccinelli had to say.
Oh, God, I hate him.
They're absolutely going to happen. There's approximately 1 million people in this country with removal orders. Of course, that isn't what ICE will go after in this, but that's the pool of people who've been all the way through the due process chain.
According to the New York Times, the Trump administration's goal in these raids is to send a strong message to those who are thinking about crossing the southern border illegally.
It's a deterrent, everybody. It's a deterrent to separate families any way he can. To separate people who are undocumented, who may have kids who are American citizens, to anybody in the area, any collateral damage. And they're going to claim, oh, it's these people with the final deportation orders. But, they have mass trials down at the border, like, 50, 60 people at a time. And they just dismiss their case and that's it, and this is so sick. And the reason that, the people are being forced to sleep outside, the kids are being forced to sleep outside on rocks and on sand with Mylar blankets, is so that they could free up the beds so that they could do the interior enforcement. So that this is so sick. This is so crazy. And we're going to have, you do have a few agents, just a few, who are a little skittish, little bit, just a touch, just a tad. I'm sure they can be persuaded by their friends in the force to go ahead and arrest toddlers, to go ahead and take the baby. Anybody who happens to be on the scene, even though they're not targets of the raid. 2,000 targets and collateral also. Babies, young children. And according to this New York Times report that was quoted in the CNN report, they said it's very rare that such coordinated raids have ever occurred. Agents have expressed apprehensions about arresting babies and young children. The agents also said this will have limited success because word has already spread through Donald Trump's Twitter feed that they were going to happen, and they're putting ICE agents in danger, they think. And also, immigrants are being helped by their mayors. They're being helped by House members. They're being helped by governors in certain states. And they're being given information about ICE. Now, we went through this whole long list of what you do if ICE is trying to arrest you. The first thing you do is they knock on your door. Don't open the door. Do not open the door. Why? Why? Because ICE agents are not legally allowed to forcibly enter a home. Why? Because being here without papers is a civil offense. It is not a criminal offense. And so that is why they can't bust down your door. So just don't open the door if you can avoid opening the door. You do have a lot of defense lawyers out there that are working pro bono from groups like Races and other, not-for-profit pro bono lawyers. I know even Howard has been trying to sign himself up to be a pro bono lawyer for this pushback on these raids. The lawyers are offering to file motions to reopen these immigration cases that, were the subject of mass immigration trials where, you have like 50 guys, 50 families, 50 whatever, 100 people in a room. A judge just dismisses everybody's asylum claim or whatever. So all of these pro bono lawyers are volunteering to file motions to reopen their cases. And when that happens, it delays their deportation, if not stops it altogether. So that's what a lot of good lawyers are doing. It's what a lot of people of conscience are doing. People who can help are trying to help. They are volunteering. Even the Department of Homeland Security is acting. Now, Acosta, as we discussed yesterday, he was confirmed. Good going, Mitch McConnell. But we have an acting director in the Department of Homeland Security, and he told the previous acting director, Mr. Morgan, to call off this operation, and because he didn't support the raids out of concern that the undocumented parents would be separated from their American citizen children. And he didn't want a whole bunch of broken families and all of these vulnerable children with nobody to take care of them anymore, becoming another problem in this country. And so there was this very, very tense meeting. And Mr. Morgan, who was the acting director of the Department of Homeland Security, who's now been moved over to Customs and Border Protection, CBP, where those guys can't even pass a lie detector test, half of them. Mr. Morgan, went to Donald Trump himself and said, move forward with these raids. Just do it. So they moved him over to Customs and Border Protection, and they put McAleenan in charge of DHS. And so even they're divided about these raids. McAleenan saying, no, don't do it. It's going to create another disaster. You're going to have pictures of little babies living in America with no one to take care of them. We're going to have to find sponsors for these babies. We're going to have to find aunts and uncles and grandparents and screen them and all that. It's insane what you're about to cause. And Mr. Morgan, who is now in charge of CBP, he said, no, let's do it. Let's do it. McAleenan said the challenges of the operation is separation of families and the logistics of housing these families until you can actually remove them, if it's possible, because a lot of lawyers are going to file to open up their cases again. Yes, they will. So you're going to have all of these parents who have children who are U.S. citizens, and ICE agents are going to need to put the children somewhere. Hence what I told you before, they're going to put them in hotel rooms. They're going to put these children in hotel rooms and try to contact a close relative somewhere in the United States to claim them. Now, they could have done this at Border Patrol in the first place, okay, with these kids. These kids could have gone to sponsors. They did not have to be sleeping outside. They did not have to be dying in the heat. They did not have to be, kept in overflowing toilet conditions. They could have gone to a spot. Now they're going to put them in a hotel room? And this is insane. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.